James Egbert. I got started making electronic music just out of kind of necessity, actually. I was in a metal band in high school, and we showed up to our practice space one day and everything was stolen. And my way of continuing my love for music and my love for creating music was with this new laptop that I had just received as a graduation present for high school. My family knew that I wanted to get into it was really audio engineering at the time, because I didn't really think that being an artist was something feasible. It seemed like kind of a long shot. And so I was planning on going to school for audio engineering so that I could get a job, hopefully, in a studio somewhere. And so I started learning GarageBand. One of the bands that we played with in that kind of time period, they were incorporating electronics, and so I was like, oh, I could kind of see how maybe I could do something that I liked with electronic music. This was right after the Postal Service came out with their album that was just kind of infamous, and that really kind of hooked me, because it was like, wow, this is entirely electronic. Like, that's something that I could do maybe. Kind of after tinkering around for a bit, the genre that I fell into was drum and bass, as that was kind of reflective of the heavy metal stuff that I was into in the past, and kind of held that same sort of energy and kind of upbeat vibe. And so I was just tinkering with it for a long time, still really in love with songwriting as well. And so I started making kind of this electronic music that was, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was kind of drum and bass oriented, but also very pop oriented. And so I just started putting that up on MySpace back in that era. And one thing kind of led to another, and I found myself producing for other artists that I had once respected. And that was really kind of where everything took off for me and became professional. I'll turn this reverb off. So right now I have legato glide off, which means that every time that a note hits, it's going to glide. But if I turn legato on, which has some really awesome purposes, then only the notes that are overlapping are going to. So to just showcase this, I'm going to pull these out so that these two are not going to overlap. They'll go directly to that note, and these ones will glide. If I mess with the portamento time, that's the glide time, that kind of helps to accentuate what it's doing there. So I'm going to hit undo here and get those notes all spread out, and I'll show you really why here in a moment. So I'm going to turn my reverb on. This is at 100% here, and it's got a nice long decay on it, and that's what's really kind of washing it out. So I'm going to click the A button. This will open up Logic's automation. And one thing that's kind of helpful sometimes, you can dive through all of these, but Serum especially has a very vast list of things that you can automate. So here's kind of a little side tip, I suppose, that can really help you out if you want to save yourself some time and you don't want to go all the way through that. You can turn this from read mode into touch mode. So what that means is that anything that you touch while it's playing is going to record that automation. So we can just do that to find this filter cutoff knob. So I'm going to hit play, wiggle it a little bit, and now you see here we've got this nice automation lane set up. So I'm going to switch back to read mode so that it only reads. It doesn't have any writing capabilities to it. And I'm going to delete this stuff. What I like to do in terms of setting this sort of instrument up, I'll start out kind of low and give it a listen. Sounds good. I might go a little lower. And then I'm just going to gradually, over the course of 16 bars, sweep it towards the top end. And you'll see again where this really kind of comes into play. because we're going to pull out the really highly vocal characteristics of this synth. So that's one way that you can very easily get to your own sort of customized sound. That's how I did it a number of years ago, is just using reverb in a way that reverb wasn't necessarily meant to, in order to slur notes in between each other. Then you get these beautiful sort of melodies that doesn't really require anything too elaborate. So I mean, if we listen to this really quick, go back to the original, unmute this. Probably would have never guessed that the two things came from the same thing. But all that is that's two sawtooth waves and a cutoff with a high resonance. And it's really that simple to get to your own unique sound just by using some effects that were not meant to be used in the way that you're going to use them. We just talked about how reverb could be very influential to a synthesizer whenever you're using it as a way kind of opposite to what it's supposed to actually naturally do. Now we're going to do that with one of the most practical purposes out there, I think, in dance music today, and that is with creating our own sort of Pryda snare. I think that this is also another really cool way to further your own sound and kind of further your own unique sound is by creating stuff like your own Pryda snare. Like if dance music community is using something largely, or if any music community is using something largely, like if you can make it your own, that's always the best way to do it. So let's jump into this. What I've got is I've got a snare from Future Music magazine. This is one of their free samples. I'm sure that you could find a free sample very similar to this out on the internet somewhere. Let's hit play here and see what the sound's like. It's got a lot of content in 1,000, sort of 1,500 frequency range. And that's kind of what's making this snare, I think, special or big sounding. So it's a good snare sample, and we're going to take it one step further by applying a reverb to it. And then even after that, we're going to cut that reverb so that it's only in the sort of space that we want it to be in during the song thing. At least that's what I've experienced in the past. So I've pulled this reverb all the way down. I'm going to hit play here, listen through the dry content, and bring up this reverb in relationship to it so that I'm really making sure that it's sitting well together. So dry. So we're at least 4 decibels lower than where we would have been had I just kind of went with what I was initially interested in. So I think that's going to be the best fit right there. Close this, and now we can bounce this into place. So snare, we'll call this the Egbert snare, because it's not the Pryda snare, but still pretty good. So now that we've got this bounced to audio, again, as I was showing earlier, I had it normalized. So that means that this audio content is nice and big, but nice and loud. So I'm going to pull this volume down before I start playing around with it again so I don't blow my ears out. So now we're going to talk about another aspect of sound design that I think has been like really crucial in terms of me understanding the fullness of sound design. It's a very overlooked feature on many synthesizers, but it's pretty crucial in terms of understanding the potential and the direction that you want to go in sound design. So that feature is the phase lock on oscillators and between oscillators. So what I've got here, I've got a instance of Serum that I've already set up, and I've got two of these channels set up. I'll just show you both of them quickly so that you can hear and you can immediately tell the difference of what's going on. But just to quickly explain this, I've got both cutoffs open. These are both the same two waveforms. It's saw wave, two of them. And then I've got mono on and legato on. And I've got these two notes dropping from an octave up on F down to a lower octave F. So you'll hear this glide sort of engaging at this speed here, 449 milliseconds. So what I'm going to do is solo this now, pull this up, and let's play this guy. Go back to the first, second, you can already tell there's a pretty vast difference, but in terms of looking at these two synths, they're almost identical. The one thing that's very different about them is that the phase randomization on Serum is turned completely down on this second bass here, and it's completely wide open. So what that means, you can see here, B, random phase, determines how random the start position in the waveform is on a new note. So, and yeah, actually that's a good point that they've got here. Most noticeable when both oscillators are audible. So we can just turn this one off really quick and listen. Can't quite tell, but whenever both are open, you actually get a phasing sort of effect. So that's kind of the first thing, and based on just that one switch, I've got both of them detuned slightly. You're getting a very different sound. The sound is drastically different based on the synthesizer, allowing the oscillators to freely determine their own phase point whenever they start, or that phase being re-triggered from the exact same point every time that note is hit. So if we go to this one with the phase that's locked, that's this guy over here, and I hit this, sounds the exact same every single time that you hit it, whereas on this guy, not necessarily as audible because it's free-flowing. So that's kind of really it to describe that one small feature. However, I'm going to go into depth on how far you can take this thing.